The deep space lanes were quiet that day. The usual hum of interstellar traffic, the blinking lights of patrol ships, and the gentle drift of freighters filled the emptiness. But there was nothing unusual, at least not yet. Every empire that controlled this section of the galaxy assumed peace had lasted long enough to allow complacency. No one expected that in the blink of an eye, everything would change. It started with a shift in the gravitational field that no one could explain. Sensors picked up an anomaly, subtle at first, barely a whisper in the readings. But then the readings became sharper, more defined, impossible to ignore. Ships adjusted their courses cautiously, their crews watching with unease. "Something's out there," one pilot muttered. Others nodded, their faces tense. This wasn't routine. Then, without warning, a massive warship appeared. It wasn't on any charts. It wasn't in any galactic registry. In fact, every scanner tried to read it, and every scanner failed. The hull emitted energy signatures that didn't match any known civilization. It was enormous, silent, and terrifying in its precision. And then one detail caught the attention of everyone watching. The technology, its signature, was similar to Earth's. Ancient Earth, long believed extinct. For decades, humanity was thought to have vanished completely. Their colonies disappeared from the maps, their fleets destroyed or gone. Some even doubted humans ever achieved the reach they claimed. And now, here it was, a human warship, decloaked in a region that no human had been seen for centuries. The patrol ships froze. Some shook with disbelief. Alien crews whispered among themselves, their languages a mix of fear and awe. "It can't be," one voice said, trembling. Humans, they were gone. How is this possible? Across the neutral zone, signals scrambled. Every empire with ships nearby tried to communicate, but nothing worked. The warship didn't respond immediately. It just floated, a silent monolith in the void. And the longer it stayed, the heavier the feeling of dread became. Rumors began to spread instantly. Pilots and commanders relayed their sightings back to their leaders. Messages were intercepted, sent to the Galactic Council. By the time the first reports reached the council chambers, panic had already set in. Meetings were called in every capital. Every empire wanted answers, but no one had them. Inside the council chambers, delegates argued, shouted, and pleaded. "If humans survived, they are stronger than we ever imagined," one delegate said. "We underestimated them before. We cannot afford to do it again." Another countered, "Maybe it's a trap. We can't just assume it's the last human fleet. It could be a weapon. Or worse, an automated war machine left behind." But fear ran deeper than logic. Older records showed how humans once defended themselves with unmatched resilience. Entire fleets had fallen in battles that should have been easy victories for the empires. Stories of human courage, sometimes called foolishness by some, now haunted the minds of commanders and politicians alike. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the unknown warship, there was only silence. The ship's interior was quiet, almost empty. A single figure moved slowly along the corridor, his steps measured and deliberate. The figure was human, tall and lean, with eyes that had seen centuries of hardship. He paused briefly, observing the controls and the ship's systems. Every display, every light, every panel whispered a story of survival, endurance, and determination. This human, later known as Commander Reese, had traveled far. He had crossed regions of space that no human ship had visited in generations. He had survived ambushes, cosmic storms, and the ever-watchful eyes of empires that thought humanity was gone forever. And now, for the first time in centuries, he had reached a place where his presence would be noticed. Sensors aboard alien ships detected him, though they could not understand his intentions. Every empire's fleet held its breath. Was this human here to negotiate? Or to destroy? The uncertainty was unbearable. As the hours passed, alien crews grew more restless. Some tried to communicate, sending signals, messages, even distress calls, but the human ship remained silent. Its hull reflected starlight like black glass, its engines barely a whisper. Observers noted the meticulous design of the vessel. It was not only massive, but engineered with a precision that suggested patience and calculation. Nothing about it seemed careless. Every feature served a purpose. Every detail was deliberate. News spread like wildfire. In a matter of days or perhaps hours, though time felt distorted in the fear, every empire knew of the human ship. Some dispatched fleets, preparing for confrontation. Others called for diplomacy, unsure how to approach the impossible. Across the galaxy, everyone paused. Even long-standing conflicts were momentarily forgotten, as the presence of this single ship commanded attention. On the freighters and patrol ships near the unknown warship, whispers turned into conversations. Some crews speculated that humanity had been hiding, observing, waiting for the right moment. Others feared they had been planning revenge for centuries, learning, growing stronger while the galaxy believed them extinct. And somewhere, deep within the hearts of these alien beings, regret began to bloom. Regret for old wars. Regret for broken promises. Regret for pushing humans to the brink. It became clear that the empires had underestimated the resilience of this species, the intelligence, and the determination that had allowed them to survive in secret for so long. As the sun of a distant star rose over the edge of the neutral zone, casting long streaks of light over drifting ships, the human warship remained motionless. It waited. The galaxy waited. And in that silence, a story that had begun centuries ago was about to reach its turning point. Somewhere inside the vessel, Commander Reese reflected on what lay ahead. He knew the empires would react with fear. He knew that old grudges would surface. But he also knew why he had come. Humanity did not seek to conquer, but it would never again be hunted or erased. The galaxy had forgotten humans, and now it would remember. And so, the first part of the story ended not with a battle, not with destruction, but with the quiet, ominous presence of a human warship in deep space, a presence that would change the course of history for every civilization that had dared to think of humanity as extinct, even from this distance. It was clear the universe had just begun to understand that humans were no longer a species to underestimate. And as the warship floated silently among the stars, the galaxy could only watch and wonder what came next. The moment the reports of the human warship reached the capitals of every empire, panic spread like wildfire. There were no calm discussions, no measured assessments at first. Commanders shouted into their communication channels, their voices shaking with disbelief and fear. Advisors tried to calm them, but the fear was too strong. The idea that humans long believed extinct had returned was almost impossible to accept. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Delegates from hundreds of star systems gathered, their holograms flickering in the vast chamber. The walls were lined with screens displaying the location of the human warship, every possible detail available. But there was little clarity. It remained unresponsive, unmoving, a shadow in the void. And that silence frightened everyone more than any attack could. Do you understand what this means? A delegate demanded. His voice carried across the chamber. Humans were thought extinct. For centuries, we have assumed they are gone. And now we see that we were wrong. Another delegate, older and more cautious, leaned forward. We underestimated them before, she said softly. We thought we could contain them. We thought they were fragile. But every record, every story we have about humans tells us that they are resilient, relentless. And this ship, this single vessel, shows that we still do not understand them at all. Fear turned to regret quickly. Many delegates remembered the old wars, the battles fought against humans generations ago. Entire fleets had fallen to what was considered an inferior species. Human colonies had resisted attacks that should have wiped them out entirely. And now, the memory of those defeats came rushing back, reminding every empire of mistakes they had made in the past. Rumors filled the chamber as well. Some believed that this warship was not alone, that it could be a scout for a returning human fleet, hidden somewhere beyond the edge of known space. Others thought it might be an automated weapon, a remnant of a long-abandoned human project meant to exact vengeance. Each possibility caused more fear. No one wanted to take the risk of underestimating humanity a second time. Outside the council chambers, fleets scrambled into formation. Alien commanders ordered their ships to patrol, to prepare for any sign of aggression. Messages were sent to allied empires, warning them of the sudden appearance. Every sector was on alert. Even planets far from the human warship felt the ripple of unease. Markets froze, factories slowed, and news networks across the galaxy broadcast updates about the mysterious vessel back on the human warship. Commander Reese remained calm. He knew the galaxy was panicking. He knew that fleets were moving toward him, trying to guess his intentions. And he understood that fear could provoke mistakes. His orders were simple: no attacks, no unnecessary actions, only observation and preparation. Humanity had survived this long by choosing patience over recklessness. Reese walked along the bridge, his eyes scanning the stars, his mind running through decades of planning. He had lived in hiding, knowing that at any moment someone could find him. He had watched empires grow, expand, and forget about the humans they had once tried to destroy. And now, humanity was no longer hidden. The galaxy had seen them. It was time to let them understand why humans had survived, and why they would not be underestimated again. Communication channels buzzed constantly as alien commanders tried to reach the warship. Messages were sent in hundreds of languages, some polite, some threatening. And still, there was no response. The silence was deliberate, a test of patience, a warning without words. The longer the human ship remained quiet, the more uncertainty grew among the empires. Within days, the panic transformed into strategic planning. Some empires began sending emissaries, hoping to negotiate before the situation escalated. Others prepared for war, bringing fleets closer to the human vessel. Military analysts debated what to do, creating simulations to predict how a confrontation might unfold. But every simulation ended with the same unsettling result. The human warship was unlike anything they had ever seen, equipped with technology and defenses beyond their understanding. Regret became more personal. Generals who had once fought humans, scientists who had studied their technology, diplomats who had signed treaties with humans, all felt it deeply. They realized that in their arrogance, they had pushed humanity too far, underestimated their potential, and perhaps even provoked their disappearance. And now, the humans were back, not with vengeance, but with the quiet power of survival. Stories spread of humans' past resilience, of their cunning strategies, their refusal to surrender, their ability to survive against impossible odds. The Galactic Council's archives were reopened, old footage and data reviewed, and every empire had to confront the uncomfortable truth. Humanity had been underestimated, and now they were paying for it with fear. As fleets moved cautiously, the galaxy's civilians watched the tension unfold with a mixture of awe and terror. News channels speculated endlessly, some claiming humans had been hiding in an undiscovered region, others warning that this might be the beginning of a war unlike any other. Families gathered around communication screens, listening to the same broadcasts, unsure whether to hope or fear. Meanwhile, Commander Reese observed it all from his quiet bridge. He understood their fear. He had seen it before, among humans when they were hunted, when they were told survival was impossible. Now the tables had turned. The galaxy that once believed humanity extinct was now watching, waiting, regretting. The human warship's presence also had a subtle effect on lesser empires, smaller civilizations who had long been oppressed by larger powers. Seeing humans reappear gave them hope. Perhaps survival was possible, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Even as the empires panicked, the galaxy began to realize that the humans' return was not just about fear, it was about endurance, strength, and the right to exist. Days turned into weeks, but still, no attack came from Commander Reese. No fleets were destroyed. No planets invaded. The humans remained calm, their silence growing more powerful with each passing day. And with every passing day, the leaders of every empire understood something they had forgotten long ago. Humans do not need to strike to make a statement. Their mere presence, their survival, was enough to shift the balance of power across the galaxy. Inside the council chambers, debates raged on. Some argued that immediate action was necessary, that waiting would allow humanity to gain an even stronger position. Others argued for diplomacy, fearing that any misstep could provoke the humans into retaliation, even if retaliation was not their true intention. Every discussion ended the same way, with uncertainty and fear. Meanwhile, Commander Reese prepared for the moment that would change everything. He knew the galaxy would eventually demand a message, a reason for his appearance. And when that moment came, he would speak not as a conqueror, not as a fighter, but as a witness to humanity's survival. And so, Part 2 ends with the galaxy on edge. The fleets remain in place, the councils still debating, and the civilians still wondering what will happen next. The humans wait silently, reminding the galaxy of one undeniable truth. Survival is a power that no empire can ignore, and fear is a language that every civilization can understand. The stage is set. Every empire knows it. Every fleet feels it. And every species, whether rich in technology or limited in numbers, begins to understand that the humans they once dismissed as extinct are back, and this time, they are not alone in their strength, nor in their resolve. Weeks had passed since the human warship decloaked in the neutral zone, and the galaxy was still in shock. Fleets hovered cautiously at the edge of its orbit, scanning for any signs of aggression. The council's debates continued day and night, but the silence from the human ship was louder than any message could be. People across the galaxy whispered about it, some with fear, some with hope. And in the middle of all this uncertainty, a single human prepared to speak, for the first time in centuries, to the civilizations that had forgotten his kind. Inside the bridge of the warship, Commander Reese stood alone, looking at the holographic displays that floated above the console. He had spent decades preparing for this moment, training for survival, studying the galaxy, and learning patience. He understood that appearances could mislead, that fear could drive decisions, and that the empires were terrified not just because of his ship, but because they remembered humans from the past and feared what they did not understand. Reese activated the main communication channel. Across hundreds of light years, screens flickered on in every empire's fleet and capital. In every council chamber, across every command center, commanders and delegates leaned forward, holding their breath. The human warship did not just broadcast a signal, it demanded attention. And when the image finally appeared, it silenced every voice in the room. The screen revealed a single human, calm, composed, and unyielding. He did not wear a uniform, filled with flashy symbols of rank or authority. He was simple in appearance, but every line of his face, every movement, carried a lifetime of experience, struggle, and endurance. His eyes were steady, piercing through centuries of misunderstanding and fear. "I am Commander Reese," he said, his voice steady but carrying weight. "I speak to you not as an enemy, but as a representative of the species you believed lost." Humanity did not disappear. We survived. We endured. And we have come to remind you that survival cannot be ignored, underestimated, or erased. There was a pause in every council chamber, every fleet, every command center. Delegates whispered to each other. Generals leaned back in their seats, shocked by the calm confidence of a single human addressing the entire galaxy. This was not a threat, not yet, but it carried more power than any fleet of thousands could ever hope to project. Centuries ago, your empires tried to erase us, Reese continued. You destroyed colonies, attacked our ships, and forced humanity into hiding. And for a time, you succeeded. You thought we were gone. You believed that fear and aggression would be enough to end us. You were wrong. We survived because we adapted. We survived because we learned. We survived because humanity never surrenders to injustice. The halls of power in every empire trembled at his words. Some leaders felt anger. Others felt guilt. Some tried to rationalize their fear, reminding themselves that the humans were only one ship, that perhaps their technology had limits. But the confidence in Reese's voice and the presence of the warship suggested otherwise. In the neutral zones, smaller civilizations that had suffered under the weight of larger empires watched in awe. This human, this lone survivor of an extinct species, reminded them that no matter how powerful an empire might seem, strength alone cannot erase willpower. That simple, undeniable truth spread across the stars. Reese paused, letting his words sink in. I do not come seeking war. I do not come seeking revenge. Humanity has learned the cost of conflict and the value of life. We have spent centuries hidden, rebuilding, surviving. And now we are here to remind you all that we will not be hunted again, that we will not be dismissed, and that humanity has a voice that will be heard. Across the galaxy, fleets hesitated. Some opened channels to respond. Messages were drafted, debated, erased, and rewritten countless times. No empire wanted to make the first move. The humans' calm, measured tone, the very presence of Commander Reese, created a tension that no weapon could match. Every species remembered their past mistakes and wondered, what if we had gone too far? What if humanity's survival had created something we could no longer control? Even the largest fleets, armed with thousands of ships and weapons powerful enough to destroy planets, seemed small in comparison to the quiet authority of a single human figure on a screen. Reese's presence forced every leader to confront the reality of their arrogance. They realized they had underestimated the species they had once fought, dismissed, or thought extinct. And now, that underestimation had consequences they could not escape. Reese continued, speaking directly to the delegates and commanders. The humans you knew in the past were not the humans you see today. We are stronger, wiser, and more resilient. We do not seek domination, but we will defend what is ours. And we will protect those who cannot defend themselves. We are not invaders. We are survivors. The words hit like a shockwave. Reports later described entire fleets freezing in place, unable to act, caught in the realization that the humans' return was not about war. It was about survival and resolve. For once, the galaxy understood that power was not measured solely by numbers or weapons, but by endurance, intelligence, and the courage to face impossible odds. For the first time, the Galactic Council began to see the humans not as a vanished threat, but as a species that had been wronged. Memories of past conflicts surfaced, the betrayals and broken treaties humans had suffered. And with those memories came regret. For the first time, leaders admitted quietly, to themselves or their colleagues, that they had acted too quickly, too harshly, without understanding. They had underestimated humans, and now that mistake was impossible to ignore. While the empires debated and whispered, smaller systems and neutral planets began to change their stance. Seeing a human speak with authority, clarity, and restraint inspired hope. Perhaps survival was possible, even when the odds seemed impossible. Perhaps resilience could defeat fear. And somewhere, across countless worlds, people who had never known humanity before felt the strange and sudden weight of respect. Reese's speech was not long. It did not contain threats, and it did not promise destruction. It was simple, calm, and clear. But every word carried meaning. Every pause, every gesture reminded the galaxy that humans had endured centuries of fear, violence, and displacement, and now they had returned. Unbroken and unshaken dot, and then he concluded, "We are here, and we are not your enemies. But we will never again be invisible. Humanity survives. Humanity endures. And humanity will be remembered." When the transmission ended, silence returned. But it was different now. This silence was heavy with understanding. Fleets held their positions, councils sat in stunned quiet, and ordinary citizens across the galaxy tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The humans were back, but not as conquerors or aggressors. They were back as a living reminder of resilience, courage, and the consequences of underestimating an entire species. Commander Reese stepped back from the console. His job was not to fight. His job was to remind the galaxy of humanity's presence. And in that quiet moment, as stars moved silently outside the warship's viewports, he understood that the galaxy's perception of humans had changed forever. Part 3 ends not with action or destruction, but with awareness. The human species, long thought extinct, had spoken. And every empire, every fleet, every council that had once dismissed humans as weak or gone now, faced a truth they could not deny. Humanity had returned, and they had the power to shape the galaxy simply by surviving. The stage was set for the next chapter. Fleets waited, councils planned, and the galaxy reconsidered every action it had ever taken against humans. And somewhere in the quiet of the warship, Commander Reese prepared for the moments yet to come, moments that would reveal not only what humanity had endured, but what it was willing to do to protect its survival, its legacy, and its future. The galaxy had barely recovered from Commander Reese's first transmission when something even more astonishing happened. The human warship, which had been silent for centuries, began broadcasting records, not just messages, but evidence of history long forgotten, of actions once buried by time and secrecy. Every empire, every fleet, every council that had once dismissed humanity as extinct now faced truths that shook them to the core. The records began with the attacks on human colonies centuries ago. The empires had believed they were acting in their own interest, protecting borders, securing resources, or punishing what they called rebellious colonies. But the footage, the logs, and the images Reese shared told a different story. Entire human settlements had been destroyed, some without warning, others under false pretenses. Ships had been ambushed, civilians left defenseless, entire systems stripped of life. For centuries, these acts had been minimized, justified, or even forgotten. Delegates in council chambers across the galaxy watched in silence. Some covered their faces in shame. Others turned to colleagues, their voices shaking. We did this?" One whispered. "All of this to them?" Reese did not speak yet. The footage alone was powerful enough. Every human who had been lost, every colony that had been attacked, every life that had been extinguished, played out before the eyes of the galaxy. And as the records unfolded, it became clear. The humans had been pushed to the edge, hunted, and left with no choice but to survive in the shadows. Then Reese began to speak again. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that no fleet, no weapon, no council could match. "You believed humanity was weak. You believed we could be erased, ignored, or destroyed. And for a time, it seemed you were right. You had the numbers, the technology, the power. But you underestimated something that cannot be measured by weapons or fleets. You underestimated humanity's will to survive, its capacity to endure, and its determination to live against impossible odds. Across the galaxy, fleets paused. They realized that survival itself was now a statement, a kind of power that no empire had fully understood. The humans had not come back seeking revenge, not yet at least. They had returned to reveal the truth, to make every civilization confront its own actions. Reese continued, showing records of the hidden human projects that had been in progress for decades. This ship, he said, is not built for conquest. It is built for protection, for the defense of what remains of our people. It is a guardian, a vessel of survival. And it is not alone in its purpose. Humanity has prepared for centuries to ensure that what happened to us will never happen again, not to us, and not to anyone who seeks refuge under our protection. The revelation was profound. It was one thing to see a massive human warship appear in the neutral zone. It was another to realize that humans had not only survived, but had learned from every attack, every betrayal, every loss. Their strength was measured not in numbers, but in patience, intelligence, and the ability to endure in secrecy. Delegates and commanders began to murmur among themselves. Many admitted for the first time that they had acted recklessly in the past. They had treated humanity as a threat to be eliminated rather than a civilization to be understood. And now, facing Reese and his ship, they understood that those past actions had consequences they could no longer ignore. Small civilizations and neutral systems watched closely. They had always been at the mercy of larger empires, forced to follow rules imposed upon them without choice. Seeing humans reappear with the evidence of their survival inspired hope. If humans could endure, perhaps others could too. Perhaps strength was not always measured by conquest or power, but by the courage to survive injustice and emerge stronger. Reese paused the transmission and let the records speak for themselves. Screens across the galaxy flickered with images of human ingenuity, resilience, and adaptation. Human settlements hidden in distant, remote regions of space thrived in ways empires had never imagined. Colonies once thought destroyed had rebuilt themselves in secrecy. Human ships, though few, moved with precision, efficiency, and purpose. Every record underscored a single message. Humanity could not be underestimated. For the empires, regret became a tangible presence. Older leaders remembered the decisions they had made decades or even centuries ago, the choices that had led to attacks on humans, the broken treaties, the orders to eliminate colonies. For some, the regret was personal. For others, it was institutional. A realization that their governments had acted without understanding, without foresight, and without compassion. Reese then spoke of humanity's philosophy. Survival does not require war. Strength does not require aggression. Humanity had endured because it had learned, adapted, and waited for the right moment not to strike, but to be seen and respected. We do not seek to conquer, Reese said, but we will defend ourselves, our people, and those who cannot defend themselves. Humanity has survived because we chose patience, not violence. And now, the galaxy knows that underestimating us was a mistake you cannot repeat. The message had the intended effect. Fleets that had once considered attacking the human ship hesitated. Councils that had debated military options now considered diplomacy. And across every world, the story of humans surviving, adapting, and enduring became a lesson in humility and reflection. Even the empires that prided themselves on their technological superiority realized the truth. Human ingenuity, combined with patience and strategy, had allowed a species thought extinct to survive and thrive in secret. And now, through the voice and evidence of Commander Reese, the galaxy understood the full extent of that resilience. For smaller civilizations and independent worlds, the revelation brought hope and inspiration. If humans could survive when every empire thought them gone, then perhaps other species could endure under oppression, under threat, and under impossible odds. Humanity's story became a symbol, a lesson that courage, patience, and perseverance mattered just as much as technology and power got. The records also revealed humans' careful planning for the future. Systems were hidden, colonies protected, resources secured. The warship itself was a symbol of that careful preparation, a guardian for humanity and its allies. Reese's words reminded the galaxy that humans had survived not because they sought revenge, but because they valued life, strategy, and endurance. As the transmission concluded, silence fell across the galaxy once more. But this silence was different from before. It was no longer filled with fear alone. Now it carried understanding, reflection, and for some, shame. Every empire had been forced to confront its past actions and their consequences. Every fleet had been reminded that power is not measured solely by ships or weapons, but by resilience, intelligence, and the will to endure. Commander Reese stepped away from the console, letting the records and his words settle in the minds of those watching. He had not attacked, he had not threatened, and he had not provoked. Yet the impact was undeniable. Humanity's message had been delivered, and it could not be ignored. The stage was now set for the next chapter. Empires would have to reconsider their policies toward humans. They would have to decide whether to approach with diplomacy, caution, or fear. And humans, having revealed their hidden history and strength, were ready for the decisions to come. Part 4 ends with a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity's survival was a testament to resilience, planning, and endurance. The empires had been reminded of the mistakes of the past, and they now faced the reality of a species they could no longer dismiss. The human warship remained in the neutral zone, silent but powerful, a symbol of what it meant to survive when all odds were against you, and a warning that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. The calm that had settled over the galaxy after Commander Reese's revelations did not last long. While most empires were still processing the truth about humanity's survival, one of the largest and most aggressive empires saw an opportunity to strike first, to assert dominance, and to remind everyone that they were the strongest power in the region. For decades, this empire had built its reputation on military might, crushing any species or civilization that stood in its way. They had long dismissed humanity as extinct, a minor footnote in the galaxy's history. Now, faced with the return of humans and their warship, fear mixed with arrogance. The leaders of this empire decided to act before anyone else could. They would destroy the human ship. They would prove that humans were weak, just as they had always assumed. Fleets were mobilized quickly. Hundreds of ships, armed with the most advanced weapons available, moved toward the neutral zone where the human warship hovered silently. Communication channels buzzed with orders, and soldiers prepared for a battle they assumed would be easy. Intelligence reports had confirmed the ship was large, but the Empire believed numbers and firepower would be enough to overwhelm it. They were wrong. Commander Reese observed the incoming fleet. From the bridge of his warship, he watched the ships moving with precision and aggression. He had expected this reaction. He knew that fear often drove empires to rash decisions, that arrogance could blind even the most powerful leaders. And he understood that this confrontation would be the first real test of humanity's return to the galaxy. "Prepare the defensive systems," Reese said calmly. His voice carried authority without urgency. "But remember, we are not here to start a war. We are here to survive, to protect ourselves, and to show the galaxy that humanity cannot be underestimated." The attacking fleet opened fire first. Lasers and missiles streaked across space, moving toward the human ship at incredible speed. The initial strike was precise, calculated, and intended to destroy key systems immediately. Yet, As the first wave of attacks struck, something incredible happened. The weapons did not penetrate the human ship's defenses. Shields, energy barriers, and adaptive systems activated faster than the eye could follow. Missiles disintegrated before they reached the hull. Energy beams bent and dispersed harmlessly into space. The attacking fleet had expected resistance, but nothing on this scale. Every ship, every pilot, felt the shock of realizing that their weapons were ineffective against a single vessel. The Empire's commanders panicked. Orders became frantic, chaotic. More ships were launched, more attacks coordinated, but every effort failed. The human warship did not counterattack. It did not need to. Its mere defensive presence was enough to neutralize the threat. From the bridge, Reese spoke to the attacking Empire's fleet through an open communication channel. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but carried the weight of centuries of experience. You have attacked without understanding, without knowledge, and without caution. Humanity does not seek war, but we will not be destroyed. Withdraw your fleet, and you may live to see peace. Attack again, and the consequences will be yours to bear. The silence that followed was deafening. Thousands of ships, equipped with weapons designed to obliterate entire worlds, hovered helplessly. Every pilot, every officer, every commander realized for the first time that humans were not weak. That the humans they had assumed extinct were capable of defending themselves far beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. Inside the attacking Empire's command center, leaders argued, shouted, and blamed each other. Some wanted to retreat immediately, fearing total annihilation. Others, blinded by pride, wanted to push forward. But the proof was undeniable. Their attacks had failed. Their weapons had been rendered useless. And the human ship remained intact, calm, and silent, waiting for them to make the next move. Back on the human ship, Reese monitored every movement. He did not rejoice at the failure of the enemy's attacks. He did not gloat. Instead, he focused on the lives aboard the attacking ships. Humanity's survival had taught him the value of life, even the lives of those who had once hunted humans. He knew that demonstrating strength without unnecessary destruction was far more powerful than a show of force that killed indiscriminately. The attacking fleet slowly began to retreat. Not all pilots wanted to leave. Some were determined to press on, to fight what they still believed was a manageable opponent. But the human ship's defenses made clear that any continued aggression would be catastrophic. Fleets began to pull back, their formations fractured, their morale shaken. And as they withdrew, every empire observing the battle understood something crucial. The humans' power was not just in their ships or weapons. It was in their strategy. Patience and precision got in the aftermath. Fleets from other empires watched closely. They had hoped to remain on neutral ground, to see how the situation would unfold. Now, they realized that humans had the capability to defend themselves with unmatched skill. And the lesson was clear. If humans could neutralize one of the most aggressive empires with a single ship, imagine what they could do if provoked further. The council convened immediately after the failed attack. Debates erupted, but this time, the focus was different. No longer was humanity dismissed. No longer was fear mixed with uncertainty. Now there was a deep respect, mingled with caution. Leaders admitted openly that humanity had been underestimated. Mistakes of the past were impossible to ignore, and every empire recognized that the humans' return could not be treated lightly. Reese sent a final message to the empire that had attacked. It was concise, firm, and unforgettable. Humanity does not seek conquest, but we will defend what is ours. Consider this a warning and an opportunity. Respect our presence, and you may continue to exist. Test us again, and you will face consequences you cannot escape. The message echoed across the galaxy. Every civilization, every fleet, and every colony received it. The humans' position was clear. They were strong, prepared, and willing to defend themselves. But they were also measured, restrained, and strategic. The power of restraint, combined with undeniable strength, made the humans a force that no empire could ignore. Smaller civilizations took note as well. They had often been under the control or influence of larger empires. Seeing a single human ship stand against one of the most aggressive powers without firing a single lethal shot inspired hope. Perhaps it was possible to survive and thrive without endless war, even when facing impossible odds. Humanity had taught the galaxy that true strength lay not just in weapons, but in strategy, patience, and intelligence. As the attacking empire's fleet disappeared into the distance, the human warship remained in the neutral zone, quiet and still. Commander Reese walked along the bridge, reflecting on the events. Humanity had survived centuries of persecution, hiding, and exile, and now they had proven their ability to defend themselves, not through aggression, but through control, knowledge, and foresight. The galaxy, for the first time in generations, understood the consequences of underestimating humans. Fleets would now move with caution. Councils would now consider diplomacy. And for the empires that had once believed they could erase humanity, regret filled the hearts of leaders everywhere. Part 5 ends with a powerful realization across the galaxy. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. One ship had demonstrated that strategy, patience, and strength could neutralize even the most aggressive empire without firing a single destructive attack. The stage was set for the final part, where the galaxy would begin to accept humanity's presence, negotiate peace, and learn the lasting lesson that some mistakes can never be repeated. After the failed attack by the aggressive empire, the galaxy changed. The balance of power that had lasted for centuries shifted in a way no one had expected. Fleets that had once acted without thought now moved cautiously. Councils that had debated endlessly now listened carefully. Everywhere, beings of every species realized that humans were no longer a forgotten part of history. They were present, powerful, and capable of shaping the future. Commander Reese remained aboard his warship, observing the galaxy. He did not rush to attack or make demands. He understood that the human survival had always been about strategy, patience, and the long view. Humanity had endured because it waited for the right moment to be seen, to make its presence undeniable, and to ensure that the galaxy would respect them. That moment had come. The empires began to send delegations, emissaries, and envoys. Unlike the hostile fleet that had attacked, these representatives came cautiously, with messages of negotiation rather than war. They wished to understand the humans, to establish terms, and to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Every communication, every approach was careful, as if touching something precious and fragile. Humanity's presence had reminded them all that arrogance and aggression could have consequences. They were no longer willing to face in the council chambers across the galaxy. Leaders debated how to respond to humanity's return. This time, the tone was different. Gone was the fear mixed with uncertainty. Instead, there was respect and caution. Diplomats acknowledged that the humans had suffered because of past actions, that their disappearance had not been natural, and that their return was a reminder of the consequences of arrogance. Smaller civilizations watched these negotiations with interest. They had long been overshadowed by powerful empires. Seeing humans assert themselves with calm, measured authority inspired hope. Humanity had survived centuries of being hunted, hidden, and underestimated. They had endured not through sheer force, but through intelligence, strategy, and perseverance. This example gave smaller civilizations confidence that they too could survive difficult circumstances without resorting to constant war. Commander Reese addressed the galaxy one final time before disappearing into the outer regions. His message was clear, firm, and calm. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not wish to dominate or destroy. Our goal has always been survival, protection, and respect. We return not to punish, but to ensure that we are never again dismissed, underestimated, or erased. The lessons of the past are clear, and we hope the galaxy will choose to learn from them. The reactions across the galaxy were profound. Fleets lowered their weapons. Councils agreed to treaties that recognized humans as independent and sovereign. Leaders issued apologies for past attacks on human colonies and acknowledged that the humans' disappearance had been forced, not voluntary. Even some empires that had long considered themselves untouchable realized that their actions had been reckless and short-sighted. Humanity's reemergence also changed the balance of power in more subtle ways. The warship itself became a symbol of endurance, intelligence, and restraint. Empires and smaller civilizations alike understood that a single human vessel could neutralize an entire fleet without firing a destructive shot. This realization transformed strategy across the galaxy. No longer could a species rely solely on numbers or weapons to assert dominance. Patience, planning, and respect for life became new measures of strength. Over time, humans and other civilizations began to communicate more openly. Trade routes were negotiated, borders respected, and agreements reached that prioritized diplomacy over aggression. Commander Reese's approach had shown that strength could be expressed without violence, and that survival often required intelligence and restraint, rather than conflict. In the neutral regions where humans had once remained hidden, new settlements were established. Humanity reclaimed some of the worlds it had protected in secret, while other planets opened to diplomatic and peaceful coexistence. The galaxy began to see humans not as a threat, but as a species to be respected and understood. For centuries, humans had endured hardship, persecution, and near eradication. Now, their patience, intelligence, and resilience had earned them a place of honor in the galaxy. The human's presence reminded every civilization that underestimating another species could have severe consequences. Arrogance had led empires to destroy or attempt to destroy humans in the past, but survival, endurance, and strategy had returned humanity stronger than ever. Commander Reese reflected on the lessons humanity had learned. Survival had required hiding, observing, and preparing. It had required restraint when provoked and intelligence when threatened. And now, humans had demonstrated that these qualities were more powerful than weapons alone. By showing the galaxy that they could defend themselves without unnecessary destruction, humans had gained respect and security, not through fear, but through wisdom. The galaxy began to record this moment as a turning point. Scholars studied the humans' return, military strategists revised doctrines, and diplomats learned the importance of patience and understanding. Humans had shown that even a species once thought extinct could emerge not as conquerors, but as a force of reason, endurance, and resilience. For smaller species and civilizations, the human story became a symbol of hope. It demonstrated that even when facing powerful empires, it was possible to survive and protect what mattered most without resorting to endless war. Humans had endured not through aggression, but through intelligence, patience, and courage. That lesson spread across the stars like a quiet, powerful revolution. Commander Reese eventually prepared the warship for departure. Humanity's presence had been established. The galaxy had been reminded of its mistakes and had learned, through evidence and experience, that humans could not be ignored. And as the warship decloaked once more, moving quietly into the hidden regions of space where humans had survived for centuries, the galaxy watched with awe and respect. The final message from Commander Reese was simple: we will always survive. We will always endure. Humanity has returned not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy that mistakes have consequences and that's survival. Intelligence and courage are the true measures of strength. Remember us, and remember the lessons we carry. And with that, the human warship disappeared from sight, leaving behind a galaxy that had been forever changed. Empires reconsidered their policies. Fleets moved with caution. Councils debated diplomacy over aggression. Smaller civilizations felt hope and courage. And everywhere, the lesson of humanity's survival and return became clear. Never underestimate those who endure, those who survive, and those who carry the wisdom of the past. Part 6 ends with the galaxy transformed. Humanity's story had come full circle, from near extinction to survival, from obscurity to respect. Commander Reese and his warship had reminded every civilization that patience, intelligence, and endurance are as powerful as any weapon, and that the consequences of arrogance and underestimation could be greater than anyone imagined. The humans had returned, not to conquer, but to ensure that their place in the galaxy would never again be ignored. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and for the first time in centuries, humans and other civilizations could look forward to a future shaped by understanding, respect, and the knowledge that true strength lies in survival, wisdom, and courage.